we'll tell you. You can go to Hulu or ABC News if you want to watch the entire interview with Robin Roberts and Kerry Washington. It's worth watching. It was nice. It was nice to see. She's from the
It,
Bronx. I didn't know that. J Lo
yes.
went to her school. I didn't know that. I mean, it's like Kerry Washington is to me the model of what it looks like to be a superstar powerhouse celebrity and keep her life, maintain her the sanctity of her privacy. I love that.
Yes.
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
that should be the model. Mind your
Hmm.
business. We don't need to know that you
Hmm.
was married. Are you happy? Okay, good. The part that she's sharing, though, I think is for all of us. So, and that's why I think it's important to have this conversation. But let's play the clip.
As I talk about in the book, about 5 years ago, my parents sat me down and gave me some new information about myself that I didn't know. And it really changed the way I thought about myself, about our family. It was shocking.
Hmm.
And so I had at the time sold another book idea that was like the 10 things I learned about Olivia Pope, or like
Yeah.
10 things
Yeah.
Olivia Pope taught me. And every time I sat down to write that book, all I could think about was this new information
Yeah.
about my identity and our family dynamic. And so I said to the publisher, I don't think I can write a book, and tried to give them their money back because
Yeah.
I thought there's no way I'm going to write a book about this. But with time, it felt like, as private as I've been about my kids and my husband,
Yeah.
I've been very public about my relationship with my parents.
Yeah.
My relationship with them, they come to premieres and to red
Yeah.
carpets, award shows, and they're in every movie.
Yeah.
So it felt like I needed to be honest about this relationship.
Now, the book is called Thicker Than Water, right? And I learned that the actual statement is the covenant of the blood is thicker than the water of the womb, meaning that
Mhm.
the allegiances and alliances that we make with one another, the covenants that we make with each other, is thicker than our birth and who we came through, the womb that we came through, the oaths that we pledge to one another in this life, more powerful and more binding than the blood, than the water of the womb. I don't know if she
Absolutely.
knows that because that is not part in the book, but that's the name of the book. And what she found out, she was going to do one of these skip gates, check my, finding my roots. And she's bringing her parents in. Parents been very, very much part of her life, her public life. Of course, she was on Scandal and she's won awards. She's been directing. I loved her in Little Fires Everywhere. Phenomenal actress she is. So she has her parents, Earl and Valerie, is like talking to Skip Gates, and her mom is like, well, what if hypothetically Kerry's father came through artificial insemination? Would that affect the outcome of it? He was like, yes. Yes, it will. She was like, well, he's like, you should tell her. They never told her. 40 plus years, never told her that her father is not her biological father. Earl is not her biological father. Her mother was artificially inseminated. She's looking for her biological father now because Earl could not necessarily produce the sperm that was needed to produce her, but he was absolutely her father. And it raises questions for her about who she, she had to challenge who she is. And I think about so many people who find out later in life that their parents aren't their parents, or they were adopted, by a grandparent when their mom was really their mother. I've seen that a lot, actually, particularly, in the 60s, and because people went away pregnant, no one knew they were pregnant, came back, somehow the grandmother now has a new baby, and that's her child, no one ever says anything. Or all of the people who may not know who their fathers are, or they're maybe were adopted, like Kirk Franklin. We were just talking about him a couple of weeks ago, and how he said the wound is like, I see my mother, I know that's my mother, but why isn't she taking me with her? Didn't know who his father was ever, and until recently, he just now in his 50s finding out who his father is. But what does that do to your psyche? And should it do something to your psyche, Dr. Robin? Should it matter so much who our biological parents are?
Well, and for transparency, I will say that I know Kerry Washington. I have not seen her for a while, but when you said, I wonder, when people are on about their books, what are they selling? And what Kerry is selling, I mean, she didn't, and I have not spoken with her, but she's selling freedom. Freedom in terms of, who am I if what I believed was not the case, and yet I am who I am. I am, what, not even who I am. I just am, I just be. And so a part of what you're talking about, and I've seen this personally and professionally, is we've been conditioned that our blood, and that's why it's important, the fullness of that quote, that our bloodline means more than our lines of connection, than who nurtured us and loved us and changed our diapers. And so what this does to the psyche is it unsettles, like many other truths, when we come in contact with new information that expands the map of our identity. And so this really, to me, is such an opportunity for people who have been adopted, but also for people who feel trapped by who their bloodline is, as if somehow they can't be someone else because of whose womb they came from.
I was, Kerry Washington, again, phenomenal actress. And, I was like, book in my book, I'm like, Then I was like, no, you're right. This is a freedom conversation. As she said, she was going to give them their money back because she was like, I don't really have a book. I'm not going to talk about this stuff. It's too personal. But then she talked to her parents and made a decision that this would help liberate some people. Because I was thinking, I talk a lot about my parents, primarily my dad, because he's not here. So I'm just going to say that's intentional. I talk about my dad for a lot of reasons. First of all, I think it's important, particularly in our community, to model what it looks like to have, fathers who are intentional about their children, which my father was. In so many ways, I learned so many things. My mother was equally as impactful in my life, but she's here. I get to talk with her every day. I don't get to talk with him. So this is my way to communicate with my dad too, who may transition. So I'm intentional about that. But I was thinking, am I who I am because of my, because I rely on my parents' narratives? Like, do I lean into their stories to form who I am? So I was actually having that conversation after watching Kerry Washington. And if I learned that my dad wasn't my dad, would that change who I am? So I was asking that question too. If my mother came up, even though I looked just like, so I was like, that would be a trick because I look like that man, be like, you was a lie. But my mother would say, if you feed them long enough, they're going to look like you. That would be my mother's thing. Feed them children long enough, they will look like you. Would that change me if I'm no longer a hunter? Would I not be a hunter? So I was thinking about that.
Right.
And I arrived, Dr. Robin, to the conclusion that I probably would still be me.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be here in this form.
Well, you would be you. And I remember as a child asking my parents, I was young, if I was adopted. And I'm not sure why. Like you, I look so much like my mother and father. I sound like them. I mean, just it was kind of crazy, but my siblings are, almost 11 years older. And I couldn't imagine that someone would choose 11 years later to have a child. So I wondered, was I either adopted or a mistake? Quite interesting, which meant, do I not belong here? Was I not wanted? So either not wanted by you all, not wanted by someone else. Like, how did I land in this family? And so much of that had to do with, where I felt connected to them and where I felt so different. And I think what you're talking about, what Kerry is talking about in her book and in her life, is this issue of belonging. A lot of my work in the world is about belonging in corporations, with organizations, and with people, like where we feel we fit and where we don't. And it is interesting that a birth certificate, whether it is real or not, somehow gives us a sense that someone claimed us. And when that is no longer true, or there is a piece of the narrative that is not true, it can bring into question these very primal needs about whether or not we can call someone home.
Mm.
Home.
866-801-8255. I want to ask this question of you who are listening right now. Was there a moment in your life? Does anyone have this experience that Kerry Washington shared where they found out later in life that their parent wasn't their parent? Their parent wasn't their biological parent. And if so, how did that shift and change you? I'm just curious, how we navigate that. For those of you who never knew who your father was, did that motivate you differently, or did it stunt you? And what did you do to work through it? Have you worked through it? 866-801-8255. And collectively, Dr. Robin, I was thinking about Black folk collectively, because I feel like this is another, I talk about these inflection points for us. We're battling ADOS versus foundational Black and versus this and that, and it's like, but it's all around this sense of belonging, right? Who belongs and who doesn't belong, right? Who's original and who's not original, and it's all about lineage, right? Again, it's about lineage instead of about the greater humanity, which binds us all, right? We're really bound by something greater than the water of the womb if we really lean into it. So, these battles that we're having internally probably, keep us at odds when we really could come together around this notion that there is something that holds us together that's greater than all it is. 866-801-8255. I want to have that conversation. I think, and I want to have it with you because you're equipped to work us through it.
And secrets. I just want to throw that out, that secrets is also a part of this. If we keep something a secret, is it because it's bad? And so we need to think about the messages we send when we act like someone is our sister who is really our mother. Like, if it's not bad, then why did I hide it? And so that's something else for us to explore.
Well, let's sit there for one more second before we go to break. The number again is 866-801-8255. The fact that her parents weren't going to tell her, if not for this Skip Gates thing, because I guess at some point, and this is the compounding of lies, right? At some point, it's like, why the longer you sit in a lie, the harder it is to tell it, right? To tell the truth about it. Because now it's like, okay, I could have told you at 10, I could have told you at 20, I could have told you at 30, when you were getting married, when you're having children, when it would be important to know your biological makeup, because, doctors want to know that. Does this run in your family? Now that the lies now can also be harmful. But for this Skip Gates moment, she still wouldn't know. How does that, how do you broker the trust? That trust that you I remember the first time he's like, Santa Claus doesn't exist. Okay, y'all lied to me about the Tooth Fairy too. What else are you lying about? Right. So that was my little mind. What else? So now I'm looking at my parents like, oh, okay, I know when you're lying now. And so I was tortured for them because I was like, oh, wait a minute, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. Like that. Nope. Tell me the truth. And so I wonder about even how we navigate those moments in our own lives, with the people. Now, are you distrustful across the board now? If your parents lie to you about something so important as who's your daddy, whoo, that's something.
And we'll talk about compound lies, but the issue is really compound fear. That's what we're talking about. They didn't lie. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've again met her parents, but I don't know them. I've met them. Did they lie because, it was the easier thing to do, but easier from what? From the fear, from the insecurity, and particularly as we talk about a Black man being unable for whatever reason to impregnate his wife. There's so much shame around that. There's still so much shame around, in vitro and someone who can't. I mean, people make jokes about this. We've heard President and Mrs. Obama share their story, and we've heard people making fun that the most powerful man in the world needed in vitro. So think about how cruel we are about our humanity, meaning sometimes women can get pregnant and sometimes they can't. Sometimes a man's sperm can, penetrate and that egg, and that works, and sometimes they can't. But we don't have room in our perfected, airbrushed illusion of being human to make room for that. So when we talk about why someone would lie, we often, I'm not talking about pathological liars, but why us, normal folk, good folk, would lie. We need to talk about fear.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about it. This is the Karen Hunter Show. Dr. Robin is in the house. We got a doctor in the house.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you lost thing is the one?